5 o'clock, so I'm going to open our meeting and advise everyone who's present that we are live streaming this to the community. For the purposes of the recording, if you could wait till I've announced you before speaking, and request that mobile phones be turned off or put to silent. We have a apology from the Deputy Lord Mayor, or a leave of absence actually, a leave of absence from the Deputy Lord Mayor, and an apology from Alderman Barakis, and I think Councillor Ewan will be on their way, so they will get here soon, I think. So starting with the acknowledgement to country, in recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the city of Hobart was built. I acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity and their culture and rights. The minutes of our last meeting was the 23rd of October. They've been circulated. Would anyone like to move those?
Those, thanks.
Moved by Councillor Ewan, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. That's carried unanimously. Transfer of agenda items. Are there any items that anyone would like to transfer on the open or the closed? There being none, we'll move on to communications from the Chair, and I do have communications. So starting with Salamanca volunteer reception, on Friday the 3rd of September, I hosted a reception for 51 people who have volunteered their time over the last 12 months at the Salamanca market. This is a really good news story for the city, that when the market restarted in 2020, August 2020, in a smaller and modified way, we were only allowed to have 500 people, and we had 12 volunteers on site. But as restrictions eased, but there were still public health restrictions, the market has grown, and we now have 230 volunteers who have signed up on the books, and there are 60 to 80 volunteers on site. So it was really great to be able to host the morning tea to show Council's appreciation of their ongoing commitment and their dedication to supporting the market. It's pretty clear that without the volunteer effort from this group, we wouldn't be able to run the market with the COVID restrictions. So wanted to note that and their support officially in the minutes. The Tasmanian state budget was handed down on 26th of August since our last meeting. I guess some of the key initiatives to note for the city includes $27.8 million for state road upgrades in the southern region, but it's not clear if these do include Davey and Macquarie Street upgrades. $3.5 million to update regional land use strategies, and that will include the southern land use strategy when that project comes around. $700,000 to the Planning Policy Unit to undertake planning reforms and delivery of the Tasmanian planning system when that kicks in. And $500,000 has been allocated to local government reform investigation, both in 21-22 and 22-23. A number of City of Hobart assets received funding. So the Queenborough Oval, change room improvements, $2 million. The place to stand North Hobart Oval lift and accessible seating, $370,000. The Sandy Bay Sailing Club, lift installation, toilet upgrade and new shed, $331,000. Newtown Bowls Club, Stage 1 redevelopment, $1 million. And the North Hobart Bowls Club, new synthetic service, $150,000. And the Sandy Bay Rowing Club, new pontoon, $150,000. In terms of funding for these projects, some of these projects have been applied for and will be managed by the individual clubs. However, for some of the larger projects, our council officers will have a role in them. And while we're very welcoming of the funding, it's important to note that council resources will be needed for the project management and may not have yet been planned for. And we also need to factor in long-term asset replacement costs and depreciation impacts. So it's something that we need to note in that in those funding allocations. And Then there's some at this stage, fairly limited funding for the Hobart City deal. So Greater Hobart Traffic Solution, 22.8 million, but there's no project details of how that will be spent, but we will ask for further information. And $500,000 on increased bus services and $500,000 on bus stop upgrades. And the final thing I wanted to mention is that hotel quarantine. So on Wednesday, 1st of September, the CEO and I met with the Department of Communities following a public announcement that Hobart would be expecting a repatriation flight from the United Kingdom this weekend, which happened yesterday. There are well-documented risks with hotel quarantine, which have been experienced by our capital city colleagues. However, we recognise that Tasmania, like all other states, is going to have a role in the repatriation of Australians who have been stranded overseas. We asked a number of questions about the processes in place to protect Hobart residents and businesses from the risk of COVID escaping Hobart CBD hotels. And the department has assured us that a whole range of safety measures are put in place and that they're of the highest standard. And they also assured us that the CEO will be kept in touch and updated regularly, and the CEO will monitor the situation and assist. The city will assist the project where we can as well. Thank you. Item 4 is notification of council workshops, and there have been none. Item 5 is public question time, and I think we have 2 questions. I think the first one received was from Ms. Edwards. Ms. Edwards, if you'd like to come forward. Now, you have, I think it's, 1 minute preamble or to do your preamble and questions.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure if that's on, but I'm sure you can hear me anyway. My question with notice, as I wrote in my email to members on Friday, 2nd of September, has 2 separate yet related questions. And these questions have arisen in the wake of Council's Village Well consultation, which produced the North Hobart Place Vision Framework and the companion MR Cagney Access and Parking Plan. As a result, or rather, the questions that have arisen as a consequence are that I ask Council to 1, compensate resident parking permit holders living within the area of the recent changes to parking in North Hobart by either A, restoring parking bays previously available to residents on side streets, for example, the 2 parking bays directly in front of Pitt Street, or 6 Pitt Street, I apologise, or B, reducing the permit fee in line with the reduced provision of service, and that Council 2, review its approach to community engagement in a way that builds community capacity, mitigates the politicisation of important issues, and improves the ways in which Council selects and applies consultation methodologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. And this response will be provided in writing to you, and it will also be in the minutes of the next meeting. So just in relation to the first question, the CEO is preparing a comprehensive report in relation to parking in North Hobart and the outcomes of the community engagement and next steps regarding implementation of an action plan. That will include responding to the petition. It won't specifically consider the exact suggestions that you've made, but will certainly respond to the issues around parking in North Hobart and the broader issues around residents and the side street changes. In response to your request for Council to review its approach to community engagement, the City's approach is in accordance with the Council's adopted engagement framework, and we'll send a copy of that engagement framework document as part of the response. Now, that was adopted just, I think, about a year or no more than 2 years ago, but like all frameworks and strategies, of course, that will be subject to periodic review, and we can certainly take suggestions on board about that community engagement framework. Hobart Council is a member of the International Association for Public Participation, and as part of that, we seek to undertake activities that are inclusive and accessible to members of the community, create an active and informed dialogue, achieve governance by facilitating open, fair and constructive dialogue, and allow for informed decision making, also to understand the views and aspirations of the community. Specifically in relation to the engagement activities that were undertaken in North Hobart, first of all in developing a draft place vision and access and parking plan. That took place in 2020, early in 2020. It involved 3 visioning workshops with local residents, property owners and traders, that, as I said, occurred in February 2020. So the residents and community workshop had 86 participants, and the local business managers owners workshop had 11 participants. Then there was also, separate to those workshops on the vision, there were 4 access and planning workshops, and they were also held in February 2020. The local residents and community workshop had 82 participants, and the local business managers owners workshop had 16 participants. Interviews were also undertaken with the former and current presidents of the North Hobart Traders Association, representatives from key transport agencies and cultural clubs in the precinct, including Italian, Greek communities and the Chinese community of Tasmania. As part of this project, there were also 45 street surveys, I think, with people just using the in the street, and there were 500...
Sorry, was that 45 separate surveys or 45 people in one surveyed?
It was the same survey, but it was undertaken with 45 people on the street. I think it's called intercept surveys is the technical term, and there were also 531 online surveys filled in as part of that project. So that was that project. Then there was COVID, so there was a break, and then in 2021, which is referred to as stage 2, was to understand the community's feedback on the draft, place vision and parking and access plan, and that was undertaken following a council resolution to do further further understanding work. So that involved an online survey attracting 295 responses, stakeholder meetings with the North Hobart Community Associations and the North Hobart Trader Association, and a walk and talk with North Hobart traders. In both stages, there was extensive promotion of the engagement activities through direct mail out to businesses and residents, social media, e-newsletters, a postcard and cinema campaign, and all of the documents that I've outlined in this response will be included in the response to you. Thank you. All right. Now I have a second, there is a second question from Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. At Council's last meeting on the 23rd of August, Alderman Zugo questioned the Director of City Innovation if he had consulted with Mr. Kelly at the North Hobart Traders Association prior to the installation of parking meters being installed at Elizabeth Street, North Hobart. His response was yes, he had fully consulted with me. As I have previously advised all elected members and the CEO on the 20th of August, I maintain that no consultation had been made with me, apart from an initial overview of what the intentions were. No response was given to any of my email that I sent after that, firmly opposing the meters. Regrettably, the Director's very public response labels me as a liar. My question is, could the Director of City Innovation please provide the evidence of the consultative process that he engaged with me regarding the installation of the meters, as he claimed at the meeting, and how this policy followed any of the guidelines in the very comprehensive community engagement framework policy? Thank you.
I'm going to pass that to the CEO as it's a matter relating to a staff member.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And given that it does relate to a personnel matter, I won't be in a position to provide a response this evening. I will, in fact, take it on notice. However, I would like to acknowledge that I've not been able to respond to your email, so thank you for sending that through, and apologies for the delay in responding. As I said at the meeting last week, I think it's within everyone's interest to move forward with some further consultation as part of the development of the comprehensive report, and that's what we're intending to do, Mr. Kelly. However, I will provide a detailed response to your email, and apologies again for the delay in getting back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to item 6, which is petitions, and I think we have one petition, CEO.
Lord Mayor, that's correct. We have a submission, a petition rather, that is from Peter Ronald Silby of 25 Enterprise Road, Sandy Bay. The action sought, Lord Mayor, is that Council initiate an amendment to the Hobart Interim Planning Scheme 2015 to rezone 21, 21B and part of 21A Enterprise Road, Sandy Bay from general residential to low density residential. And there are 208 signatories to the petition, Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, I move that to be considered by the appropriate committee, which presumably is the Planning Committee.
So moved by Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Councillor Dutta. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Consideration of supplementary items. I don't think there are any.
That's correct, Lord Mayor.
And item 8 is indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest. Do any elected members wish to indicate an interest in any item appearing on the open agenda? There being none, we will move on now to the City Planning Committee. I note that the Council is now acting as a planning authority. I'll invite somebody, whoever is doing it for the Deputy Lord Mayor, to move item 9.1.
Lord Mayor, usually it's Alderman Barakis, but in this case I'm happy to move it if that's okay with you, and I'll exercise my right not to speak at this stage. Okay. So I move the motion that's on the books.
All right, and so just so that it's clear for anyone listening at home, this is for 100 Pinnacle Road, Mount Wellington, new and upgraded shared use and mountain bike tracks and associated works.
I'll second that.
So seconded by Councillor Harvey. Would anyone like to comment?
Just 3 questions, Lord Mayor. Thank you. After the city planning meeting, few of the ratepayers approached me and asked me a few questions. And while it is not directly related to planning, it still is important to answer these questions, I think, in the context of things. First question is this: what was the rationale behind naming those tracks? That's the first question. Question number 2, there has been a lot of unfortunate processes with regards to consultation, and this question with regards to consultation, and the question is, what was the extent and the methodology used to consult the community members or those who have interest in this matter or stakeholders? And the third question is, if this was to put on hold, what would be the possible or potential ramifications of this?
Lord Mayor, I wonder if I could attempt to start off the answer to question number 2 about the consultation process.
If Councillor Dutt is happy for that, do you want it to
as I introduced the motion? Yes. Could I just make a comment first? Consultation for approval of these tracks was extensive and excellent consultation, and I'll pass over to the Director to provide the details to that.
Thank you. Mr. Boyle, did you want to respond?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Perhaps if I could start by responding to the question with regard to deferment. The Council is in receipt of grant funding for these projects, so any deferment from this evening would make it very difficult for us to comply with grant funding requirements as stipulated in grant deed. So I'd answer that question first if I could. With regard to the naming of the tracks, I'll defer to Mr Fisher. In regard to consultation, this has certainly been an issue that's been raised numerous times, and as Councillor Dutta said, it's not necessarily part of the Planning Authority's consideration, but it was extensively reported to committee, and I think Mr Fisher has more detailed response. So, Lord Mayor, with your permission, Mr Fisher, I'm sure, could provide a response to both the consultation issue and the naming.
Sure. Mr Fisher, would you like to come to the microphone?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I assume this is on.
I think it is.
I've got a loud voice, so I'm sure that you can hear me, so that won't be a problem. Look, in regard to the consultation process, it was an extensive level of consultation undertaken by the city with regard to these, the mountain bike network plan, of which the 4 mountain bike tracks that are in front of the committee tonight represent a small portion. It's important to realise that there were 3 levels of consultation engaged with the community. First, bike riders specifically, to identify what range of opportunities they felt were useful or preferred in the lower foothills of Wellington Park. And that formed the basis of a further more extensive and more widely spread period of consultation with residents and with people who had engaged with the city in terms of the Your Say Hobart program. And that led to emails, direct email notification of over 3,000 individuals with the opportunity to comment on the proposed plan. The Your Say Hobart site was visited more than 4,800 times during that event, during that period, during the public exhibition period, and over 1,791 downloads of the report were undertaken through the Your Say Hobart platform, and in addition 535 downloads of the quite extensive Dirt Art Consultants report, which led to the draft plan strategy for the mountain bike network plan for the foothills of Wellington Park were undertaken. So as you can see, quite extensive opportunities to consult, including in walking groups, running groups, obviously mountain bike groups, but as well as conservation groups. And we're fortunate enough to a number of community groups to forward on our notification of the opportunity to comment, including the Tasmanian National Parks Association, who put that opportunity in their newsletter and mailed it to their members as well. 596 survey responses were received. Obviously, a significant number of those were from mountain bike riders, as one would expect, with 420 of those being from mountain bike riders. Surprisingly, a number of, or more than 60 were from running groups and runners, and 104 from walkers as well. And the majority of those 3 groups supported the intent and the proposed tracks within the mountain bike network plan. I'll go on. If that's any other questions on that particular consultation, I'll answer the question about the naming of the tracks if you'd like.
Can I just very quickly ask, of the walking groups, it seems to be where there's some maybe disagreement. Do you have a sense of how many of those supported and didn't support? Or not so much groups, it was individuals, was it? Yeah.
51.5% of the walkers were happy with the proposed actions within the plan, and 13.3% were neutral. That obviously, in terms of mountain bike riders, 92.8% were in support of the proposed mountain bike network plan. And in terms of runners, which is an interesting group who indicated that they felt that mountain bike tracks were more interesting and more preferred to run on than were walking tracks which are established at a grade and obviously perhaps don't provide the running experience that they would prefer. And 71.6% of the running respondents were in favour of the plan as well. In terms of the naming of the tracks, that really relates to the 2 tracks that we refer to as Rocky Whelan and Free Whelan. Both refer to the naming of a cave on Mount Wellington which was occupied by John Rocky Whelan, who was a notorious and perhaps unfortunately bloodthirsty bushranger in Hobart in the 1850s. He escaped from Port Arthur, avoiding the dog line apparently in 1854, which is a feat. He travelled to Hobart and lived in the cave on the mountain for a number of months, He was eventually captured and convicted of murder of a number of citizens. Is considered to be one of the most notorious bushrangers in Tasmania, and he was hanged in 1855. The tracks operate within the area of Rocky Whelan's Cave, and the use of that name in the naming is really a reflection upon that. Mountain bike tracks have I suppose a tradition of being named perhaps in a less traditional way than we might name our walking tracks: north-south track, east-west track, pinnacle track, or zigzag track. So they have a particular name that serves to, I suppose, to recognise for mountain bike riders that they are in actual fact mountain bike tracks. The other two tracks were the Upper Luge, which is formalisation of an informal track. That track was named by local informal track builders on Mount Wellington, so we've retained that name. And the other track name is Skid Road, which reflects the timber harvesting activity, the skidding tracks, which are the log haulage tracks that crisscross the southern slopes or the lower slopes of Wellington Park. And that's really the reason we've tried to connect those with current features or geographical names within the area of the tracks that are being proposed.
Lord
Mayor, I did reserve my right to speak earlier. Look, back to planning grounds, because as Councillor Dudder said, they were not planning grounds that these questions were referring to. I think we've been satisfied that the consultation was thorough. Just to be sure what we're voting on tonight, there were only three performance criteria, or 3 or 4 performance criteria, which all have been met. But one of the tracks that will be formalised is an existing track, and the other 3, 2 of them will be shared tracks, walkers and runners presumably, and bikes. But for 2 of those tracks, the bikes will be only uphill, not downhill. And we saw photographs and during the planning committee. These tracks are quite small. They're not major fire trails. They're quite small in terms 1.5 metres wide, and they are basically formed by removing the litter that it contains. And the big trees have been mapped, and none of them, I don't believe, will be removed. So this is this is not a major development. This is basically a minor development on the mountain, which has gone through, as the Director has pointed out, Mr Fisher has pointed out, extensive consultation. The bike riders, or the mountain bike riders, are on side with this, and keeping on side, that means that illegal tracks won't be made. In other words, the rest of the bushland of Mount Wellington below the Pinnacle Road is more protected. And I think it's had to go through processes over at the Wellington Trust, Wellington Park Trust as well. They asked extensive questions and set conditions as well. So I think the objections by 2 people that seem to represent one organisation were more broader things, going back to the Great Bike Plan of all the tracks. And the one representation who made, or one deputation to the committee that was made at the planning committee, was referring to the popularity of the track from Bracken Lane, and there were essentially some parking issues there. It wasn't, in fact, when you try to drill down to the objections by the 2 people from the National Parks Association group, they didn't actually have any specific concerns specifically on these particular tracks. So I think, and they even referred to, they had a number of meetings with the officers over the last year or so regarding the general bike network on the mountain. So it's not as if their concerns have been ignored. In fact, making 2 of the tracks just uphill for the bikes is in fact listening to the concerns of the walkers. So overall, I'm hoping the council will elect to support this this motion tonight.
Any other discussion? No discussion? Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Okay, we're moving now on to the Community Culture and Events Committee. I'll invite the Chair, Councillor Sherlock, to move this motion.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Just as the recommendations there, but just as an overview,
Councillor Harvey.
in April 2018, the Council endorsed replacing the City of Hobart Art Prize with a new multi-art exhibition model titled Hobart Current, a biennial program developed in collaboration with TMAG, launched in March 2021, running for 2 months in TMAG and in 2 public space sites. The partnership and collaboration between the City and TMAG delivered a successful project, with the City receiving significant positive feedback, particularly in terms of activating public spaces and offering paid opportunities to local artists. TMAG has indicated that they were very happy with the outcomes and seek to continue the partnership. The City's annual budget allocation for the biennial exhibition is $108,206, which is a total of $216,412 across the 2-year period. TMAG is providing $136,030 in kind support and will seek sponsorship of $25,000. And I'll put that motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Further discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 11 is community commitments, final endorsement. Councillor Sherlock.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'll put the recommendation once again.
Councillor Harvey.
And just as an overview, the Council endorsed the draft community commitments for public commitment on the 10th of May. They outline the City's commitment to inclusion and equity within 6 key focus areas. There were 29 submissions received through Your Say and 5 formal submissions received via email. 32 submissions were broadly supportive of the commitments with suggestions for improvements, and 2 respondents were not in support. Informal feedback from reference groups and networks was highly positive, highlighting the City's leadership on inclusion and equity and providing suggested changes to strengthen the commitments. And I would just like to really commend our staff on a wonderful piece of work and very thorough in the way that they've gone about consulting the community and also the commitments that we're actually putting forward. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 12 is Tasmania's own market site fees. Councillor Sherlock.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'll put the recommendation once again, and just a brief overview. Tasmania's own market is the interim smaller market that is operating while Salamanca market is suspended due to COVID-19. The Council in May 2021 resolved the fees and charges for Tasmania's own market. Trading conditions for stall holders have since changed due to the rolling border closures. There remains continued uncertainty regarding the trajectory of the current pandemic, and as a result, it is suggested that further flexibility in the operation of the market is required so that the City can respond quickly when it is necessary to do so. And I would also like to just take the opportunity to say thank you very much to our volunteers who do an extremely wonderful job volunteering and giving their time. Thank you.
That needs a seconder. Councillor Ewan. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 13 is Economic Development Committee. Alderman Thomas.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I'll put the item on the books.
Seconded by Alderman Sexton.
Just make the one comment. This was a renewal of a similar level of funding that was applied prior to COVID. There was a presentation made to the committee which indicated a lot more activity than in the 2019 period, 2020 period, sorry. So the committee unanimously agreed to provide that funding.
Thank you. Any discussion? No discussion. Yeah, Alderman Sexton. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. That brings to a close the items in our open agenda. So I will thank anyone who is watching and move to... Oh, we need someone to move to the closed. Councillor Sherlock, seconded by Councillor Harvey. All those in favour of moving to the closed, say aye. Against, say no. Carried unanimously. So thank you. We are now closed.